Hello and welcome to this short session on how much change do you really need for GDPR compliance, live from HPE Discover in Las Vegas. My name is Jan de Clercq, I'm working for HPE Pointnext. I'm working in the worldwide HPE Pointnext Security Center of Excellence, where I'm focusing on things like hybrid IT security and over the last years also GDPR. So in this short session I will start off with the definition of GDPR, what the General Data Protection Regulation is really about. I'm going to talk about the main themes and the main changes in this regulation, and I will also then finally talk about how we can help you get ready for GDPR compliance. So the General Data Protection Regulation is a new regulation that is effective since the end of May of this year, that has been created by the European Commission, and that is really about making sure that organizations are dealing in a proper fashion with the private data of European citizens. So it really defines what you can do with those data, how you can process them, how you can obtain them, etc. The GDPR regulation replaces the directive that dates back from '95. It's a very important change. It has a very big impact, and some of those impacts and some of those very important changes I will discuss in the next slides. A lot of people think about GDPR in a very negative fashion. They see it primarily as a pain. At HPE Pointnext, we also see it as a very big opportunity. For example, it will allow you to get a clear overview of what data you have, where they are stored, how they are processed, etc. Given that you will get clear insights on what data you have and how you are dealing with them, this may open up new business opportunities for your organization. And then finally, by addressing by creating specific security controls that better protect your citizen data, you create less risks for data leakages and possible damages to your corporate brand. So what are the key terms that we see in GDPR? First of all, who has to adhere to GDPR? Basically any organization that somehow deals or interfaces with the data of EU citizens. This means that it not only applies to organizations that are settled, that are based in Europe. It can be applied, or any organization worldwide that is somehow dealing with European citizen data can be subjected to this new regulation. Another very important term in GDPR is the term of personal data, and this notion of personal data in GDPR is very broad. In fact, it's any type of information that can be directly or indirectly linked to an individual. So it includes very obvious things like name and address information, but it can also be applied to things like an IP address or a cookie that somehow can be linked to an individual. In the GDPR regulation, we also have very strict the definitions now of things like a breach. What is a breach? What is a data breach? And in fact, the GDPR regulation states that organizations need to report a breach within 72 hours after becoming aware of the breach within their organization. There are some exceptions to this, but that's the general rule. Another important new thing that we find in GDPR is this notion of a data protection officer. This is a person in the organization that will oversee the application of GDPR within the local organization. The DPO, for example, is the person that should take care of the reporting of a breach to the local data protection authority. Another important change in GDPR is the definition of processor versus controller. The big difference between the two is that the processor is ultimately the entity that will stay responsible and accountable for the information and what happens with the information. The controller can only be held responsible, cannot be held accountable. I already talked about this important new notion of breach notification, which only applies if your data are not properly protected. On the consumer side, a very important new theme is around consent. So consumers should always give their explicit consent to the organization for dealing with certain elements of their personal information. So as you see, there's quite a lot of very important changes in this new regulation. In summary, what are the key changes? I talked about the data protection officer that you either can appoint internally, or you can hire a new person. Smaller organizations, they can also rely on an outsourced DPO that is provided by a third-party organization. I also talked about this important notion of breach notification that needs to occur within 72 hours after becoming aware of the breach. What I didn't talk about yet is the impact of a non-compliance situation, and in fact the European Commission can enforce pretty heavy fines there. The fines can reach up to 4% of the annual revenue of an organization. Another very important change and theme in GDPR is the notion of privacy by design. This is linked to the notion of security by design, whereby privacy is not or cannot be seen anymore as an afterthought. It is something that should be calculated in from the start of any project. On the consumer side, a very important change are things like the right to be forgotten. So you can require from a certain organization, for example a cloud provider, that your data are really erased from all the data carriers of the other provider. You can also require a thing that we call data portability, so you can ask the provider to export all your personal data from his storage providers so that you can easily change provider and bring your data to the new provider. Finally, GDPR, it not only applies to EU-based organizations, it applies to any organization worldwide that somehow interfaces with the personal data of EU citizens. What are the key GDPR program steps that we consider at HPE Pointnext? First and for all, you need to make your organization and your people aware about what's in GDPR and the needs of protecting personal data. HPE Pointnext can help here. We can help you train your people. We can make them aware about what GDPR is about. Second important thing is appointing a data protection officer. There's still a lot of open positions here, by the way. A recent study showed that only in Europe there's about 28,000 positions still to be filled for DPOs. The third important thing is to get some specific legal advice on GDPR. GDPR on some levels is pretty vague. It doesn't provide very specific recommendations. So if you want to have very specific advice, we advise you to talk to one of the specialized legal advisory companies. Fourth important thing is knowing where your data are, how they are used and how they are secured. So you need to conduct a data discovery exercise. Finally, we also advise you to do a risk assessment of how you protect your data currently in your organization. And based on that risk assessment, you can then start looking at the gaps and how you can fill the gaps for GDPR compliance. Finally, based on the gap analysis and the assessment, you can start then thinking about implementing certain additional security controls. Finally, last but not least, GDPR compliance is not a one-time exercise. It's something that you need to continuously evaluate, whether you are still compliant, whether you need to add additional stuff, etc. At the HPE Pointnext, we have defined a roadmap for helping our customers get to GDPR compliance. We can help basically with getting there on the levels of the different stages of getting ready. So we can help the customers with understanding, with the awareness about what GDPR is about. The only thing that we cannot help with here is the legal advice. So for legal advice, we recommend you to talk to specialized consulting firms. We can also help you with an assessment. We provide our own assessment services that basically look at what you currently have on the security level, on the privacy protection level. It also looks at what you would need to have in order to become GDPR compliant. And then based on what you have and where you need to go, we do a gap analysis, and we can provide you with a detailed roadmap of the things you need to provide in the years to come for GDPR compliance. Once you know what to do, we can also help you architect and design specific security controls or privacy controls. We can help with the implementation of specific security and privacy controls. And we can also help you with the ongoing compliance management to make sure that your IT environment remains compliant with GDPR over time. In summary of this short session, you should remember that GDPR is not just a pain, it is a big opportunity for organizations, primarily to get clear insight on what data they have, how they secure the data, how they use them, etc. So basically, it's a great opportunity to get new value out of your data, and also to determine whether you need to store and to keep all those data. Finally, I think a very important thing in GDPR, and this is also why I think it's a very important opportunity, is because of this notion of that security and privacy is not an afterthought. GDPR states that you should incorporate security and privacy protection in anything that you do. So security should be built in from the start, privacy protection should be built in from the start, it's not an afterthought. Another thing I want to say in summary is that you shouldn't reinvent the wheel. So a lot of organizations already have invested in quite a few security and data protection controls. So you can keep on leveraging those controls. You may want to extend those, however, with some specific additional controls that provide some specific support for specific new GDPR requirements. GDPR is also a topic that we think at Pointnext should be introduced in all transformation discussions. So anything that you do today in IT needs also to incorporate this important new regulation. Finally, HPE Pointnext again can help with the exception of legal advice. So for legal advice, we advise you to talk to a special legal consultancy firm. On the Pointnext side, we can help you with awareness, we can help you with assessment, we can help you with creating a roadmap, we can help you with the design and architecture of specific security controls, we can help you with the implementation of specific security controls, and finally we can help you with the ongoing compliance management for GDPR compliance. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you learned a bit more about GDPR.